Hi, you guys. Welcome to our little group today. It will hopefully expand as we go along. I'm Dennis, and I am one of the professors here at AIMC. I've been working here since 2002, so I'm going to year 11, which is great. I've taught many of the classes here, including diagnosis and theory and herbal medicine, formula medicine, acupuncture therapy. I work down in the clinic, and this is my life. I have no other life except for this and aerial yoga. So what we like to do is we like to present sort of a taster class for you all and see if this is something that you have want to cultivate an interest in, whether you're a patient or you're a medical provider from somewhere else. For example, we've had many doctors and other healthcare providers come in here and just want to get familiar with Chinese medicine. Whether you're a prospective student, maybe you have a loved one who's doing Chinese medicine and you want to help them out with their path. So this class is meant to try to appeal and give something to everybody who's doing it, whatever they need. So I'm going to encourage you strongly to get what you need out of this class, to ask the questions that clarify things. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time by talking on a tangent that you're not understanding, okay? So unless you really want to dismiss the question, I encourage you, please ask. I'm happy to answer. So what I'd like to do, I think we'll do this when other folks finish coming in. We'll just see where everybody else is at, what their background is. So what we'll do first is we'll just go through the syllabus to see what we got ahead of us for the next 8 weeks. So the first class being today is probably the toughest class because it's all lecture. I'm going to set down a foundation, a very strong foundation for the rest of the 8 weeks. Once you get this information with a pretty good idea about what's coming, then the rest of the stuff will be much more fun, much more exciting, and it'll give you a lot more information from what you're seeing when we look at diagnosis, when we look at acupuncture points, when we look at diet therapy, when we look at Chinese herbs and formulas. So this will be the basis for all of that, and we're just going to cover a nice chunk of the fundamentals of our medicine. So bear with it today. Hopefully you've eaten well, you've slept well, you've rested well, and if not, then just don't hurt your head if you fall down and go to sleep, okay? So the class overview, this comprehensive 8-week course examines the history and philosophy of Oriental medicine, the how and why of acupuncture, Chinese herbs, nutrition, bodywork, Qigong, and the contemporary practical applications of this increasingly popular form of healthcare. And I kind of like that increasingly popular form because Chinese medicine, ever since it sort of came over the Pacific Ocean back in the 70s, has really just sort of spread. And it's picking up steam. It's gaining so much more recognition and acceptance with the greater population at large. Insurance companies are picking it up a lot, and the numbers of people that are using it is growing all the time. So we're thrilled to be bringing it out there. Obviously, Nishanga, who's the other professor, and I feel very strongly about our medicine. We're totally excited to share it with people in hopes that they will get some benefits from it in whatever model they choose. So I do have some recommended texts here for you. You can just take a look at that. I'll refer to them as we go along. Let's just jump over here to week 1, which is today, the philosophy and the theory. So week 1 begins with a thorough look at the various theories and philosophies of traditional Oriental medicine. Discover the fundamentals of yin-yang relationships, that is pronounced yang. Okay. Qi, the 8 principles, the 5 elements, and the relationships of our mind, body, and spirit. We'll review the various factors that impact our health as well. So we'll touch on this stuff as we go through today. We're going to delve particularly deeply into some yin-yang theory and the vital substances that keep us healthy, okay? How to protect them, what they do, their role, etc. Next week, we're going to do diagnosis, tongue, pulse, and everything else. And this is where you guys as a class really get to know each other, because I'm going to give you the basics I'm going to give you the fundamental lessons behind tongue and pulse, and then after I'm done talking, you guys are all going to start diagnosing each other, which makes it really cool because it's said that it takes 10,000 pulses to master pulse reading, and after that day, you're going to have a couple in your pocket and be well on your way. Okay? Tongues are really fun and revealing. We'll get a lot of good information off of that. Week 3, we'll do the art and science of acupuncture, moxibustion, and cupping. Those are 3 different modalities that we use commonly in our clinics around here. You can actually bill an insurance through for acupuncture treatments and cupping. Moxibustion, I don't think that's actually insured, but it's something that's extremely useful. So, how many of you have had a moxibustion? Okay, a couple of you have moxibustion. Okay, so you're familiar with it. On week 4, we'll do Chinese herbal medicine. We'll look at some single herbs that are common, some that are rather exotic. We'll also look at some classic formulas that you may have taken or may use in the future. On week 5, we are going to go into Nishanga. She'll teach weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8. And she'll look specifically at individual organ systems. In Chinese medicine, here's kind of lesson number 1. When we talk about a specific organ, we're not just speaking about this collection of tissue that Western medicine has identified and with this particular set of functions. It's actually this collection of ideas and other tissues and functions and mental facilities, a large web of things that this particular organ does, so that when somebody says that you have some liver imbalances, they're not just talking about that green, blue, triangular thing sitting right here underneath your right ribs. They're also talking about your eyesight. They're talking about your soft tissue. Okay? They're talking about the emotions, how they are regulated. And there's a long list of these different things that liver imbalance would have. And so a lot of times people say, my acupuncturist told me I have kidney imbalances. And then they run off to their urologist, and their urologist runs their hosts of tests. They say they're crazy. Your kidneys are fine. Well, we're not always just talking about that specific organ. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the Nishanga is going to give you a real nice, in-depth look at the spleen, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver, and the heart. I particularly like her title of week 7, which is Loving Your Liver, because your liver takes such a beating. All of us in the West just beat our liver up all the time with all the stress, all the aggravation and anxiety, and the tension that we carry, just trying to get our kids fed, get off to work, get our kids into extracurricular activities, take care of ourselves, be fed, come to a class, listen to me talk, this kind of stuff, find parking. Parking is the source of much of that stuff, right? So that's what's ahead of you for the next 8 weeks. Are we all on board? Mm-hmm. We're game? We can do this? Okay. Any questions on that? I will say that if there is something that you want to learn that's not on there, say that you or somebody you know had an experience in Chinese medicine that you want to inquire more about and get some information on, certainly feel free to ask. When you ask me, I probably won't know the answer, so I'll ask Nishanga. Okay? All right. She's the smart one of the two. All right. So today we're going to do the introduction to oriental medicine, and we're going to specifically move into the fundamentals of traditional Chinese medicine. So we're going to go to the larger handout that I gave you. Okay.
I have a question
yes.
about the recommended texts.
Mm-hmm.
It says either, and it lists 2 books, or, and then it lists the 3rd book.
Okay. Let's see. Where are you looking at right here?
So either Real Food All Year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Between Heaven and Earth, or the web that has.
Yeah, what I did with these texts, either, see, Real Food All Year, the interesting thing about that is that book is written by Nishanga, the professor. She's the famous.
Downstairs in the lobby?
Yeah, that one's written by Nishanga, who's going to be teaching you from week 5 through 8. Yeah, so that's her text. Another good one, I think that with all these, she'll have some better insight to them. Okay. But hers is more about, as it states, eating well through the different seasons of the year. The Between Heaven and Earth is more of a guide through Chinese medicine. It's more of more fundamentals and some different approaches there. The Web That Has No Weaver was one of the earlier texts in the West, written by Ted Kaptchuk from Harvard University on bringing Chinese medicine, the basic foundations to the West. So they're pretty, those are pretty basic, and they're good. They're very, very wonderfully written books. Okay? Okay. So let's write some stuff up on the board. So I'm going to call this here 5 vital substances. And you're going to hear this a lot for the next 8 weeks, because it is these vital substances that, when they are at their optimum in your body, when they are fundamentally sound and secure and in abundance, you are as healthy as a clam, assuming your clam is healthy. Okay? You're strong, you're vital, you're vibrant, you're a healthy mind, you're a healthy body, and you're doing very well. It's when these 5 vital substances are compromised by any kind of pathology or injury or emotional taxation, that's when we start taking a hit. Okay? So we're going to get these down first, and the first one is yin. And if the first one's yin, what do you think the second one is? Yeah. You guys are all on it. It's an amazing crew we have tonight. Good. Okay. If we have yin and yang, the third one is qi, which you may have heard before, and these are all in your handout. Blood. And the last one is something that we'll talk about, which is essence. It's something that was given to you at the time of your conception by your mother and your father. And it's something that you cultivate and protect and take care of as we go through our daily life. So we'll cover these 5 vital substances, and I can't stress enough the word vital. We need these. We need to take care of them. Okay. So the first one we're going to do is yin. I'm sorry, yin and yang. We're going to look at these two pair because they cannot exist without each other. Okay. You've seen this great a great diagram of the yin-yang symbol, and it is known as the Taiji. And with the yin and yang symbol, it has some interesting characteristics in that one side is dark and the other side is light, but the light side is dark in the middle, where the dark side is light in the middle. Okay. And this illustrates real clearly the relationship of yin and yang. Okay. So just looking at this, what can we say about this? What can we say about this? What's happening here?
Balance.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's balanced.
It's balanced, yeah. So I have this, it's kind of oblong in my drawing, but you know, when you see it, it's perfectly balanced. It's not oblong, it's not triangular. It's got a certain evenness, right? What else can we say about it? Anything else?
Similar. I was just going to say equal but opposite.
Equal but opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different than balance, right? Equal but opposite. It has two opposing energies, one of them being dark, one being light. So that's an important piece of this opposite. What else? So far, if I went by what you two said, we'd have something like this. But there's more to it than just that. We got more things going on. What else do you see?
We have like pieces of one in the other.
Pieces of one inside the other, right. Each one contains elements of the other within it. So now we got this. What else? Anything else? This little figure here, what might that suggest?
Change.
Continuous.
Flow, change, continuous. Yeah, there's a movement going on here. This is sort of the tail to the head, sort of like a comet or something. You see that there's a movement, and it's circular. It's moving. So that one of them is turning into the other. This constant flow, this constant change, and this cycling. And this constant flow, this constant change that this character has is representative of everything from the macrocosmic universal energy to the microcosmic intracellular energy to the atomic level, to the subatomic level, that there's this constant movement, this constant change that's going on. And this is the law of the universe. Doesn't matter what you're speaking about, what an animal, a plant, a rock, a chunk of wood, right? Stardust, all has this dynamic to it. Without this, it ceases to really exist because that's the way nature is. So they're opposites. So they're balanced. Each one contains the other. They're moving. And as we know, we learned this about first or second grade, is that opposites are dependent on each other. The concept of tall cannot exist without the concept of short. Hot cannot exist without the concept of cold. So they have a dependency on each other. At the same time, they're kind of enlightened opposites. They also understand the interdependence on each other, that they need each other, and within that opposites that they can both thrive. So this fundamental idea, and I'll tell you as a clinician, as a guy who's in his private practice, every day I go back to these concepts, every single day. Some patient or more than one or two will come to me and I'll think to myself about this concept, about there's change happening. Remember, this is not a snapshot. This person is a dynamic creature whose things are moving, that they have these elements of yin-yang inside of them. And even if you just stop right here, if you were to walk out of this room right now, I'd say, hot dog, you guys got something, okay? Just understand this, because those of you who have an experience in any kind of ecology or nature or biological sciences, wildlife ecology, whatever, if you've got a background somewhere in the sciences or natural studies or ecology, you know what I'm talking about here because you've seen it in your studies. Okay? But if you take a closer look, whether it's business, okay, whether it's fashion, you'll still see the same stuff here. Everything has this quality there. Sometimes it's harder to see. Okay? With me on this so far? Mm-hmm. Any questions? Any revelations? We're all good? All right, cool. So this is yin-yang. So, and the notes that I gave you, I mean, you guys kind of nailed it. Here it is. Number one, opposition of yin and yang. They must have the other to exist, and they're opposing. They are interdependent. Mutual consumption. And that basically speaks to the fact that it's moving, one's turning into the other constantly, this flow, this circular flow. A nice example of that is day turns into night, turns into day, turns into night. Right? Life turns into death, turns into life, turns into death. Right? A star expands, a star contracts, it goes out, another star is born in this constant movement. An intertransformation of yin and yang, and here it is, that within each one lies the other. That one is being born from the other. Okay. So it's this concept we're going to take a little closer look at here on the next page. Let's give you some sort of examples, and these examples are very useful clinically. Again, I go to these all the time in my practice, and all acupuncturists do. So when we look at the comparison of yin and yang, we'll just touch on about a dozen here. First off is yin energy is considered to be female comparatively to yang energy, which is male. Yin energy tends to be darker than yang energy, which tends to be lighter. So what would that sort of mean? Well, let's take a look. I had a patient recently who had jaundice. The yellowing of the skin, right, to liver pathologies, right? And the jaundice can be broken down into two types of jaundice. A yin type jaundice is a very dark yellow, almost like a dusky dark yellow, where a yang jaundice is a very bright yellow. And they're treated very differently in Chinese medicine. They're two very different types. Okay. The yang jaundice patient I had was a person who was an alcoholic, and they were dying actually of liver failure. And I walked into the clinic where they were at, and I thought to myself, there's going to be 20 or so very ill elderly people in this room. How am I going to know which one it is? And the woman's son said to me on the phone, and he said to me, "Don't worry about finding her. You'll know her when you see her." And sure enough, she was sitting kind of across the room, and there she was, and her skin was almost as yellow as this folder. Brilliant yellow, bright yang jaundice. That's yang jaundice type. Okay. So yin is considered darkness, yang is lightness. So nighttime would definitely be a yin time, and daytime would be a yang time. Water is considered yin to fire, which is yang. So that follows that moistness, or the quality of moist would be yin compared to dry, which is yang. Cool temperature would be more yin versus yang, which would be hot. A good example of that is people with thyroid disorders. People with hypothyroid disorders tend to have a cooler body temperature, lower temperature, usually sitting in the 96 to the 97s. Where a person with a hyperthyroid condition tends to run hotter. So that's a yin-type thyroid condition or a yang-type thyroid condition. There's movements involved here, and under the qualities of yin, we have retraction versus yang, which is expansion. So a person who sits down in front of you, and they have this body type where they sit like this is a very yin quality. This person, you could say, is very yin compared to this person who's up and talking, and they're animated, and they're using their hands a lot. Okay? So very yin, very yang. Okay? So inward and outward would be yin and yang. Quiet versus loud. I have a friend of mine, my best friend actually, who's the guy talks and he just moves the whole time. When I'm near him, I'm yin compared to his yang. And that's another quality that's important to understand about yin and yang, is that it's always relative to something else. Nothing is yin just by itself. Nothing is yang by itself. So I might be yang compared to somebody else, but I might be yin compared to a different person. And compared to my friend, I'm much more quiet, much mellower compared to him, who's got a million things to say. He's a perfect dinner party guest because he's always got a conversation right there ready to go. All right. Softness is considered a yin quality versus something that's hard. That's very yang. The sweater, very soft. Okay. Inhibition versus excitement. My friend is a good example of that. Slowness versus rapidity. So again, a slow-moving disease would be considered a very yin type of disease, slow changing, right? Like somebody who's had arthritis for 15 years versus somebody's arthritis who's in a really big episode and changing constantly. That'd be more yang type arthritis. Okay. Substantial, meaning it might be something that you can see on an X-ray or MRI, would be more of a yin pathology versus non-substantial would be more of a yang pathology. A good example might be heel pain, right? People sometimes refer to something like plantar fasciitis, right? So if I go to my orthopedist, I say I've got heel pain, and I give him a description, and it sounds just like plantar fasciitis, which is just inflammation on the bottom of the foot that's quite excruciating for people. They can take a look at it and they can see it. And if they don't see anything on there, you could say that's kind of a yang type pathology. But if there's a bone spur, which is often the case with plantar fasciitis, because the fascia, the tendon, the fascia start pulling and it breaks the bone off, then they can say that's more of a yin type. It's got a substantial thing wrong with it. Or somebody who has any kind of pathology that's substantial, like a tumor, or swollen glands, for example, something there. Okay. Storage. The act of storing something is considered a yin function versus yang, which is more about transformation, move things, changing things. So when I eat my food and it just sits in my stomach, and just sits there, and just sits there, and I'm feeling bloated, and I'm feeling nauseous, okay? And it's just sitting there. You know, this is classic on, you know, the 26th of November when you've eaten way too much turkey on top of a cherry pie and stuff. And it's just sitting there. That's more of a yin type pathology, right? But what if it's transforming way too fast and it's triggering diarrhea or something like that? That would be more yang. So transformation is yang type pathology. And then this is an important one. Yin energy would be about reparation. This is what sleep at nighttime, very good yin activity, because our body repairs itself from all the things we've done to it during the daytime. Whereas in the daytime, which is a yang time, it's about function. Working, thinking, acting, dancing, playing, singing, all these things. These are all yang compared to that resting, that quietness, that coolness. Okay? Stillness that comes out of yin. I got a great example too that comes along with a popular activity. We're, of course, here in Berkeley, California, where we got people that do a lot of great work on their health, a lot of bike riders and so on. And we also have a lot of people that are really into yoga, right? And so I'll talk to my patients and I'll say to them, what I'd like you to do is get some kind of, they might be coming to me for a lot of stress. Maybe their stress is causing migraine headaches or causing digestive problems or back pain, whatever that stress is. And I'll say to them, well, it's important that you kind of get some kind of exercise and so on. And they say, well, I do. I go running and I go to do Bikram yoga, the hot yoga that's across the street from here. And my response to that is great. But those are both very yang activities. You may want to balance that out, remember the balancing, with some type of yin activity, which might be a type of yoga that's more about stillness, like hatha yoga, or maybe even sitting meditation, something that balances that yang versus that yin. Does that make sense? Because if they don't, they're going to run yang, 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 yang until the bubble pops and something really bad happens, right? Make sense? Okay. So that's a quick run through yin and yang. There's plenty more out there on this topic, but it's an important one to have. The second box I have for you is yin and yang and the body structure. This is important in medicine because our body has regions that are yin and yang. And if a pathology lies in one of these areas, you can consider that a signpost, not a final verdict, but a signpost as to what type of pathology this is. So, first off, it's important to recognize that it's believed in Chinese medicine that the body was kind of down on all fours at one point. And so you'll see that reflected in this theory. Okay? So the chest and the abdomen were downward. And one thing I don't have in the yin-yang thing is that down is considered yin and up is considered yang. You could kind of get that from the expansion and the retraction and so on. But since the earth is moist and cool compared to the sun, it's considered yin versus yang. Follow me? So the front of the body, the chest and the abdomen, were pointed down towards the earth where the sun was beating down on our back. So the front of the body is yin and the back is yang. However, the body, or the torso, is considered yin compared to the head, which is yang. Okay? So it's because it's above. In terms of the organs, like the stomach and the liver, the kidney, the bladder, these are all considered yin compared to the skin and the muscles because they're outward. Okay? Remember, inward is yin, outward is yang. We want to just divide the body based on the equator or the waist. Below the equator or the waist is considered yin, and above is yang. We have the limbs here, and the medial aspects here and inside, these are considered yin areas to the outer side, which is considered yang. Okay? Does that make sense? The sun hits here. Okay. The organ systems. have a division within them. In that, if you think about our organs, you have some of them are solid organs or dense organs, and some of them are hollow organs. And when I mean hollow, it means that something is moving through them. Okay? And this is a little bit trickier here, so just follow me here. In that, let's think about the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the urinary bladder, and the gallbladder. These are all hollow. So in this context, these are considered yang. They're open. But the solid organs are considered yin. They're denser. And so that would be the liver and the spleen. You guys have this on your sheet, so if you don't want to write down, well, you don't have to. But the liver and the spleen is further in the back. Okay. The liver and the spleen, the kidneys, are all considered yin organs, and also the lungs and the heart, which kind of confuses people here, but the heart is one muscle folded in on itself to create these chambers. Okay? And the lungs are kind of like a sponge, right? So it's considered a solid organ. All right. So the structure of an organ is considered yin, but the function of the organ is considered yang. Right? So if I have, a good example would be, I don't have a good example off the top of my head. Okay, what if I have a lung condition where I have pneumonia, fluid in part of my lung? Okay. Pneumonia would be more likely a yin pathology, whereas asthma would be more of it's about the function of taking in air and releasing air, would be more of a yang problem. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Blood, body fluids, these are substantial, they're dense compared to qi, which is non-substantial. So blood and body fluids are considered yin, qi is considered yang. I'm giving you two examples of qi. There are many different examples of qi, but I'll give you two right here. Nutritive qi is the qi that we extract from our food. So you could think of that as minerals and vitamins. They're substantial. Compared to our defensive qi, which is our immune response, which is considered yang. So nutritive qi is yin. The defensive qi, or the immune response, is considered yang. But the one I think that we use a lot is the last example here, where chronic disease, it's slow, it's been going on for a while, it's constant, is considered a yin type pathology, where an acute disease or pathology is considered yang. So if I was backpacking many years ago and I sprained my ankle, and here it is 20 years later, and I'm still kind of experiencing that ankle pain every now and then, kind of comes up, or maybe it's low grade and chronic, that would be a yin injury to that ankle, to my left ankle. But if I leave class tonight and I step off the curb wrong and I sprain my right ankle, that's considered a yang injury. It's acute, it's dynamic, it's changing very quickly. From the time I get home to the following morning, it's going to be different, likely. And 3 days later, it'll be different again, where this chronic one's been going on for years. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that kind of is a quick sprint through yin and yang. Any thoughts or questions on that, or any examples that you can think of outside of those? Any ideas? Okay.
Does it even matter which one it is, or do they?
Oh, compared to the diagram?
Yeah.
No, not so much.
Matter, right?
But you could say, this is
light.
This is the light.
Yeah.
This at least illustrates the yang, represents the yang. This represents the yin. So it's just the idea is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But since it's balanced on each other, it doesn't
Right.
really matter.
Yes, this is true. Yeah. Okay, so that's yin and yang. That's the fundamental thing of our whole universal law, is that. Okay, in your bodies, you have this balance of yin and yang, and it's constant. particularly as women, you experience it with your blood storage and your blood release every month. Okay? And this constant movement. Okay. So we'll take a break in about 15 minutes. Does that sound okay? You guys doing okay?
Yeah.
I know, like I said, this is where all the grunt work comes in. After today, it's going to just be all fun and games and play, right? We'll go out to the arcades and ride the Ferris wheel. All right. So the third one we're going to do is Qi. And Qi is pretty cool because most people are somewhat familiar with it. And so tonight, you all are going to go home, and your family members are going to say to you, "What did you learn?" And you're going to tell them that this guy chattered in your ear relentlessly for 2 hours. And then they're going to say, "Well, what's Qi?" And you're going to respond by saying what? Right now, what would you say? You've heard of it, I'm imagining.
Life force.
Life force? Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
It's invisible.
It's invisible. Okay. It's an invisible life force.
It's your being.
Sort of being.
Yeah.
A presence. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, most people think of it as some kind of energy, some significant energy that's invisible. Okay. Kind of like the Star Wars movies, the Force, right? It's there. You can't really see it, but you know it's there, right? Okay. The character, my calligraphy is not so good, so I apologize for anybody who knows their characters better than I. Okay. The character has a couple of different radicals. Each Chinese character has different radicals within it. Sometimes there's one radical, or maybe there's multiple ones in there. But this particular portion of it, this little cross with the other 4 lines coming off it, is a grain of rice. This is the character for Qi. It's a grain of rice. But is Qi just the grain of rice? No. There's something else happening. It's this part up here, which is steam coming off the rice. This is rice being cooked. So there's this idea that there's something there that's happening, and it's dynamic. It's moving. And the interesting thing, it's also warm. To cook rice takes warmth, and we're going to see how that's sort of brought about as we look at the qualities of Qi in just a second. So you have the steam. The steam is the best representation of Qi. This warm, upward, dynamic transformation. Qi is considered to be a yang substance, where blood is considered to be a yin substance. We'll get to blood after we do Qi. So you could say that Qi is, or sort of resides within the yang. Okay? So let's look at Qi. What does it do? What's its role? What's its function? Okay. The first one is that, remember, this is yang, so all these qualities will be about yang, right? We're good with that? Mm-hmm. So first one here is that it's transforming. When something changes from one thing to another, it's a yang energy. It's dynamic. Okay. So when that caterpillar comes out of that cocoon as a butterfly, that's a very yang occurrence. Okay? Right. When the child is being born, that's an extraordinarily yang occurrence. Right? Change. Transportation or transporting, when something is just simply moving. Okay? Right now, this movement is yang compared to me just standing here and lecturing, which is very yin. Now, if I start sprinting, then just the walking is very yin compared to the dynamic movement back and forth. Okay. So any type of movement is considered generally a yang idea. But then you go to the third one, and it says holding. Well, if stillness is considered yin to movement, which is yang, what about holding? Well, holding takes work. It's holding something upright. It's providing a place So it's a verb. It's holding. It's not just sitting or stillness. To hold something in place. And this is important clinically because hopefully all of us will grow older, well into our late years. And if you live long enough, chances are some of your organs are not going to hold quite so well, right? And they start to kind of prolapse, right? And that's a sign when things start to prolapse or start to sink. That's a sign of yang being compromised in some way. Okay? Even an idea of a common occurrence is women who, for example, have miscarriages early in their pregnancy, have a early term loss, usually within the first 13 weeks, okay, first trimester. This oftentimes is a yang deficiency, a weakness of the yang, not able to hold the baby in place. And which is interesting because the hormone progesterone, which does that, is considered to be a yang hormone compared to estrogen, which is very yin. So it's this holding, this ability to hold upright. But even for yourself, if you're trying to keep something upright, lift weights, or hold a structure in place, if you can't hold it, then it might suggest that your yang is not as strong as it could be. So the next one is raising, to simply lift something upward, is the yang dynamic. One of the areas we see this one oftentimes is in the areas of a non-material energy, which is your moods, your emotions. One of the problems in our world, of course, are a lot of people suffer from depression. They wake up in the morning time, and last thing they want to do is face the world. And they finally crawl out of bed, they stay in their pajamas, and they make their way to the couch, and they lay there, and they just dread the day. Right? And one of the ideas is that the clear yang energy, the clear chi energy, is not rising up to the mind. And so they end up with a foggy, dull mind. Right? So that's the raising of yang energy, the clearness to the head. And if you're somebody who drinks beverages like green tea, one of the functions of green tea is to lift clear yang into your mind to help you think more clearly. Green tea was first drank, before it was drank by the masses, it was drank by the monks in the monasteries to help them meditate, to bring clear yang energy into the mind so that they could heighten their awareness through their meditative practices. Okay. I know, do lattes do that too? I hope so, because
They're delicious.
yeah. Yes. I taught my son how to make lattes. Did you ever teach him how to make lattes? Not yet. I taught my son, he's 11 years old, he makes me lattes.
Nice.
It's the best thing, the smartest thing I ever did in my life. I can't believe it. I don't know if that's more testimony to what I haven't done. Nonetheless, there it is. Qi is protective. Your immune response is largely a great reflection of the quality of the yang in your body. And qi is warming. It warms up your body. Okay. So qi's relevance in medicine. Qi is an energy which manifests simultaneously on the physical and spiritual level. So I listed a lot of different physical ideas, things like prolapse, things like hormones. These are functions of yang, but also this emotional component. And I think that for our medicine, because we believe so much in the intimacy between mind and body, that is this idea right here that that few patients come into our clinic that don't have this reflected somehow in their pathologies. That our mind and our body, our spirit, must have that kind of health with the qi to add vigor into their mind, and it reflects clearly into their body. They just feel better, right? We all know that if we don't exercise for a while, then all of a sudden we go out and we get a good walk in or a good run in or do something like that, how much better we feel. Our mind, our body, everything comes in together. Qi is in a constant state of flux and in varying states of aggregation. When qi condenses, energy will transform and accumulates into a physical shape. Every organ, every tissue, every cell in your body is a collection of chi that is condensed and formed the vehicle you call your body. Okay. Original chi. The original chi is something that comes to you after you were born. It is the essence, we'll talk about essence a little bit, is the essence within your meridians. And this is what we're accessing with acupuncture largely. So we go into these pathways and manipulate, stimulate, somehow try to work these acupuncture points to get to these meridians and try to regulate and harmonize and benefit the body. This original chi is what helps us to have the stamina to thrive through our day, to help us bring vitality into everything we do. And we all know this. We meet somebody new, you're at work, you've got a new coworker, they come in, and the moment you see them, the moment you look them in the eye, you're registering, you're diagnosing them, really. You're saying to yourself, does this person have vitality? Is this somebody I want to work with? Is this somebody that feels like they're going to bring something to the table? Or is this somebody that's going to potentially bring me down? Probably whatever you think it is going to be wrong anyway, right? That's one thing we know about it. People, when we meet them, whatever we think we know about them, we don't really know. It's usually wrong. But nonetheless, you're starting to register this stuff, right? About this person. We see it in their eyes. We see that vitality and the energy, their body movements, the way they hold themselves, their look in their eye. That's that vitality. And by the way, our ability to expand our energy into other people is an expression of our yang. Right? If you go to the Walgreens tonight to go buy your favorite bonbons, right? And you put them on the counter, and you don't want to look the cashier really in the eye, you just want to kind of walk out, that's a lower yang state. But if tomorrow you go back in there and you do the same thing, and then you go and you actually have a conversation with them, maybe about their children, about their work, about the weather, right? That would suggest that your yang is better, in a better state. So chi is about transformation, and the original chi facilitates the transformation of blood. As we know, blood is just a state. It's not static, and it's constantly in movement, nourishing, moistening our body. And chi is what facilitates that movement, that nourishing. There is something important here called food chi, right? Those bonbons you ate, or that nice bed of kale steamed with a little dribbling of lemon juice on it. Those are two different states of chi, right? And that's why we support people eating good, healthy, organic, locally grown foods that carries good, solid chi for our climate and our area, versus canned foods that's been sitting on the shelves at Costco or Walmart for years, perhaps. The chi's quite different, right? We all know this. We eat food that's fresh versus food that's been sitting around. The fresh food has more chi to it. It's more alive. So we'll talk, Nishanga will go into this into great detail with you guys. As she's, like I said, she's an incredible teacher to bring to you the ideas about food chi. Gathering chi. Gathering chi is when we take our food chi and then we breathe in clean air, which has good chi, versus like in a place like Mexico City, which has really poor air quality, right? You're out on an area out on the coast or something, you're getting some good clean air, has better chi to it. You combine the food chi and the air chi, and it comes together to create gathering chi, which is used by the body to nourish, particularly nourishes the heart and the lungs. The heart governs our blood, the lungs spread the air about within our body, and it gives strength to our voice. And then there's something called true chi, which is the refined chi. This is the good stuff. This is the stuff that when you feel when, as if you're an athlete, you know it because when you're in the zone. When you're a musician, you know it when you're in the zone. That's how I like to think of it, as being in the zone. When everything is just coming together, you feel mentally and emotionally and physically harmonized. Like you've really got your finger on the pulse. and time and space just disintegrate, and you are there, here, now, doing what you do. Doesn't matter if you're organizing your sock drawer. You know when your true chi is alive, and you feel good about it, and that you don't have to complete anything because you're so present. That's the refinement that creates true chi. There's a couple others here I want to go through is yin qi and wei qi. Yin qi is what we extract from our nutrients by having a good, clean, healthy diet and eating well and digesting well, which are two very different things. You can eat well, but that doesn't mean you're going to digest it well. Or you can really have problems in extracting if your digestion is not working well. And then we take this nutritive qi and we want to create this wei qi. Again, this is our immune response, our ability to fend off pathologies, whether it's common cold or whether it's tumors. So in terms of pathologies, we'll look at 4 basic pathologies of qi, meaning how does qi go bad? How does qi go bad? So first off, we can have deficiency of qi, meaning just not enough. Maybe we didn't get enough sleep, maybe we didn't get enough good quality food. Most of us feel this around 11 a.m. or 4 in the afternoon. We feel like, gosh, I just really could use a little bit of lift, caloric lift, perhaps. Or you've got a new environment at your home, maybe a new baby, and you haven't been sleeping well, and you feel totally spent, and your chi is down. Maybe it's been going on for a long time. Maybe it's because you had a child and you never got to really recover from your postpartum time. Okay? Or maybe you had an injury that's really taxed your chi. Qi can be sinking. And this goes back up to the ability of qi to hold and to raise. So that, again, can be physical, sinking qi. You see this when you see people, sometimes their eyes are all sinking, right? You say their eyes are kind of saggy. That's sinking qi, right? Or it could be a prolapsed organ. But it can be emotional as well. Somebody whose shoulders are all slumped over and doesn't really hold themselves upright. Stagnant qi. Stagnant qi is when it's just simply stuck. One example is pain. Anytime there's pain in the body, it is said that there is qi stagnant in that area. But it can also be emotional qi that is stagnant. Anger, jealousy, shame. These are all areas of qi that is not moving or not processing. Guilt. These kinds of things. And then there's things called rebellious qi. And this is when qi flat out just goes the wrong way. When we take in our food, the idea is it's supposed to go downward, not upward. When it was upward, we got vomiting, right? Vomiting's not good. Unless you've eaten something, you should vomit out. Right? So stomach qi is supposed to go down, not up. So that would be a good example of rebellious qi. Coughing. If you're coughing, the air is supposed to go downward and spread outward, not upward. So that's another good example of rebellious qi. Okay. So there's lots of different pathologies, but they generally fall into these 4 areas of pathologies of qi. So if we look at, we're going to take a break after we just look at this. In terms of if the vital substance is pure, can you ever have too much yin, yang, or qi? Can you ever have too much? No. So the only state that these can be in a pathological state is some kind of, which is common, which is some kind of deficiency of sorts. This one can get stagnant or do the rebellious thing. But oftentimes what we see is that they're deficient. They're never in excess. So we want to get as much of these, and we want to harbor it and cultivate it and nourish it to the very best we can. Okay? Because it's vital. Right. I'm not going to stand up here and toot Chinese medicine's horn as better than any other medicine. That's not what I do. What I do say is that it offers a different perspective, a different map on the way the body works. And if you run into a dead end in using one map, it might be a wise thing to consider another look, another map. Right? Just like you're not going to try to find the redwood forests using a geological map. Right? It might help, because redwood trees grow in a particular type of geological formation, but a vegetation map would probably be a little more helpful. Right? So I think that a lot of times what happens with one modality or one paradigm of medicine can offer some degree of help, but oftentimes they reach a little bit of a dead end, and so it's time to shift and find something else that might be more representative of the way your body is challenged. And these are great examples of that. So it's neat to hear. So I think that the idea behind our school here as being an integrative medicine approach, that idea is superb. It's absolutely wonderful. To bring everything together for the benefit of one thing, which is the best outcome for the patient. Right. Egos aside. The blood. As I said, most of us are pretty familiar with the blood, but we're going to expand on that idea a little bit. Blood is derived from the food chi, which makes sense. We eat some food, we get some good nutrients, we bring it out of our stomach into our small intestine, it absorbs into the blood. And hopefully these molecules that enter into our blood are good ones, pure ones, clean ones, and it builds our blood. Right? Unfortunately, in today's world, with today's diet, with today's lifestyle, a lot of times the wrong things get in, and it creates a cascade of events that oftentimes lead to disease. But blood is derived from our food, is produced from the spleen and the lungs, and then it is brought to the heart, and it is the heart that governs our blood. So the heart pumps that blood throughout the body, bringing nourishment throughout the whole body, from the top to the bottom, from inside to the outside. Blood is moist. Remember, blood is yin. Yin is moist. So blood is moist. So it moistens the body. And we know that if we don't drink enough water, we also have seen through the elders in our life that their bodies tend to dry out. That's when a lot of problems start to happen. We get stiff. Our eyes get uncomfortable. Our bowels dry up and we're constipated. Hacking, dry coughs. Skin that gets really rough. Tendons that creak. Lack of fluidity. So good blood is important for bringing moisture throughout the whole body. And how Chinese medicine represents the blood differently than the West is that it is thought that the mind is housed within the blood. It is the fundamental foundation to our thoughts, particularly in the areas of quieting the thought so that we can sleep. We spend our waking hours out there in the world, interacting with people, playing, doing calculus. That's what I do in my spare time. I just hang out and do calculus. Good stuff. Aerial yoga calculus. So they're flying around making equations. So these kinds of things are very yang activities. And at nighttime, when we put our head down, right, when we get that nice little melatonin rush around 8:30, 9 p.m., blood makes a shift. It's an opportunity for our mind to quiet down, for our thoughts to go from out there and to settle down and rest. And it's an important time because it requires that for all the reparation, all those yin activities, those nighttime yin activities to happen. Our body to cool down, to curl up, go to sleep. Okay? In fact, the Chinese even say, the best way to sleep is on your right side, kind of curled up a little bit, kind of a yin posture versus this. This is not really conducive, even though a lot of people do sleep that way and they certainly get a pretty good night's sleep. But optimally, you're down here. Why are you on your right side? Because your blood starts to pool over onto the right side of your body, into your liver. What happens in the liver? Reparation, right? Recycling. dumping of old blood cells, the creation of new blood cells, all kind of comes together, integrating the marrow and the spleen and the heart, all together to repair our blood. And with that, if our mind is out there with insomnia, agitation, night terrors, night sweats, all this energy that's out there, it compromises the blood, it compromises the sleep, and you have this kind of problem. Okay. So blood has these important roles. There's a great intimacy between the blood and the qi. They are related synergistically. This is a great example of the interdependence, the yin and the yang energetics, where they rely on each other tremendously. So as we go through this, we look at blood is yin and qi is yang. Being blood is material, qi is immaterial. Blood is a form of dense qi. When qi concentrates, it can build blood, make blood, become blood. They are inseparable. Qi and blood coexist together. Qi is what generates the blood. Makes more blood. More qi, more blood. Qi moves the blood. If you don't have enough qi, but you got plenty of blood, you end up with stuck blood. A good example of that might be a bruise or a fibroid mass. Okay? Qi holds the blood. It holds it together in the right spot into the vessels. If somebody has sort of erroneous, spontaneous bruising, or maybe it's a woman who has a gushing syndrome of her menses, or she starts spotting 5 days before her bleed really starts, or 5 days continuous afterward, this is maybe the qi not holding the blood in place. And the blood nourishes the qi, brings it back in, brings the circle back to the blood, back to the qi. The marrow is considered kind of a separate area, but yeah, it's a cousin to the blood. I'm trying to think in the Huang Di Ne Jing, which I don't have. Let's see. This is the classic text. This is our seminal text on Chinese medicine. They do speak of the marrow as a fundamental beginning of blood as well. Huang Di, oops. Sorry.
Because that's where, the white cells.
Right.
All those are made.
Right. But it's within the context of the blood. Yep. The Huang Di Ne Jing. The Huang Di is the yellow emperor. Huang means yellow. Di is emperor. Ne means inner. And Jing means classic. And when I use the word classic, it's kind of used in a couple of contexts. One being classic, like a truth. Sort of like the word, the translation, Jing can be to the word essence. So it's the fundamental truth of anything. Okay? So the Huang Di Ne Jing is a text written some 2,000 plus years BC. And it's basically a text that is a dialogue between the Yellow Emperor and his advisor, Qi Bo. And so the Yellow Emperor is trying to learn the truths of the universe and life, planets, living beings, seasons. And he's asking Qi Bo these questions, and Qi Bo is the sage who's relating these answers back to him. So this is our seminal text of our medicine. There are a number of different translations of that text. So that covers blood. And the last one is essence, or Jing. So Jing is about the essence of, or the fundamental truth of our existence. Again, I mentioned this earlier, that this is something that part of it is handed down to us from the time of our conception. It's an interesting science about the health of people as adults and how that may have changed depending on the health of their parents. And there have been some interesting studies surrounding this idea that if you were to say, take your parents at the time that you were conceived over here, and let's just speculate that they were happy, they were in love, it was a beautiful thing, they're both young and vibrant, a lot of vitality over here. But in a parallel universe, you had mom who was perhaps dealing with the recovery of a long-term respiratory illness. Maybe she was a little anemic at that time. And here's dad, who's perhaps really stressed out, maybe even a little inebriated, okay, back of a Chevy, right? Maybe they were having makeup sex and there wasn't really all that much love involved. Over here was all beautiful. Okay, but here they are. And a couple decades later, here you are. What might be different in your health? And Chinese medicine has always said, well, that's your essence. That's what you bring to the table. That's what you were given. That's how your bank account sat at the time that you were born. How you sat in the starting blocks. Okay. And it's interesting that Western medicine has taken a look at this, and there's been some incredible studies done primarily in Northern Europe because they keep some incredible records on the health of families. That they have found that the days post conception and the health of the mother and father at that time, particularly of course the mother, have some indicators as to the health of that person as an adult. And they looked specifically at heart disease and incidences of stroke, I believe is the other one, which is fascinating science, right? And the Chinese have always believed that for thousands of years. That comes from your pre-heaven essence. Okay? So you're dealt these cards, now you're born into the world, and then you get something called post-heaven essence. And this is the chi that you get to have control over by your thoughts, by your food intake, by your activities and your behavior. By the drinks and the things you put in your body. So these two essences, the pre-heaven essence, the post-heaven essence, together collectively make your essence or your jing. One of them being fixed, one of them that you have control over. And there's a lot of debate as to how much control do we actually have. And depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a lot of times different answers. Some people say, you pretty much got a couple years swing based on what you need in terms of what your life expectancy is. Other people say, it's not really true. So I'll leave that to another discussion. But the essence is derived from the pre and post essence. It is said that it stores within the kidneys and flows throughout the body. It is in charge of growth and your development, sexual maturation, conception, and pregnancy. So this is an interesting point. That all these things are about change when you look at them. Growth and development, sexual maturation, conception, pregnancy, and I could throw in there also the aging processes. They're all about change from one phase to another. Now if you think about I'm a really crummy skier, but I can cut a pretty decent turn, and I can usually get down the mountain without breaking a leg. Okay? My son gets off the ski lift, gets into position, points his skis down the mountain, and just fires down. God forbid he ever has to make a turn. Okay? So when we look at these two examples, I'll venture to say that the essence is expressed in the turns. That's when the challenges occur. How do you go from one direction into the next? How does a child go from a young child into an adolescent age child and into a young adult? These changes oftentimes show the truth or the essence of a person's health, or in the case of skiing, as a skier, being able to cut those turns, being able to make changes in life. And we see this a lot in health as a person is trying to conceive a child, how they recover after having a child, how a woman or man go through their changes later in life, menopause or I guess the new term is andropause for men. How do they transition from being vibrant and strong and healthy into having to accept the terms of their mortality? How does that work? That's an expression of gene. So essence is oftentimes displayed in change. What happens if somebody loses their job? Do they weather that storm and accept it and can stand tall like a bamboo in a storm? Or do they crumble? And that's an expression of their gene. Okay. How do they deal with hardship? How do they deal with benefit? You win the lottery. How do you deal with that change? That's an expression of their essence. So there's essences shown up in physical ways, in terms of life development, as well as emotional changes as well. Okay. Essence. So again, let's take a look at these two. Can you have too much blood? Can you have too much essence? And I'm going to go with the hematocrit discussion about having too much hematocrit. The answer there on the Western perspective is yes, you can. But in the Chinese perspective, you need ample blood. You want to continue to be building your blood. It's to strengthen it. So we're going to digress, or we're going to deviate a little bit from what the Western idea is here. Because one of the things that Western does, in Western medicine, it's reductionist, right? We're going to break it down to smaller and smaller particles. Where Chinese medicine doesn't really look at it that way. Okay. So in the Chinese, one of the pathologies behind blood is that it becomes deficient. And that's very, very common. Lack of sleep will lead to this. Lack of ample time to recover from illness or changes in life can lead to this. And essence can become deficient, or can be dealt to you in a deficient way. Okay. So again, to wrap up vital substances, we want these. We want to take care of them. We want benefit. We want to benefit them. A lot of the herbs that we use, like ginseng and astragalus and so on, a lot of these are focusing on these areas. We're trying to build up, trying to tonify. And as Westerners, we always want more and more and more. That's just the nature of us being who we are, better or worse, oftentimes worse. But a lot of times we want to tonify and strengthen a lot. Right? We'll talk more about that balancing later on. Emily?
You know, this pre-heaven and post-heaven, can you just kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. Pre-heaven, again, is what was given to you by your parents at the time of your conception. After that point, it becomes post-heaven. Okay.
So heaven, in a sense, is used like what?
Yeah, heaven is immaterial to material. You can think of it that way. Yeah, in that way. The heavens are up there. They're not subscribing to a Christian idea or anything, or of God, or whatever religion is God. They're talking about something that's immaterial from up above in the cosmos. Okay. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay.
And post-heaven just starts at birth, like
yeah.
even like what your parents feed you and all that.
Absolutely.
That
yeah. So, yeah, it's what we cultivate by eating well, by going to yoga classes and doing meditation sits, right? By reading good literature and calm books, and this is an important part of our existence, right? Is to kind of cultivate that nourishment at the depths of our soul, right?
You're like contributing to your environment.
To your environment, right?
Volunteering or teaching this class.
Exactly. Yeah. Right now, right there, if you're doing something you love, you're building your gene, right? If you're doing something and you can't reconcile that activity, then that's a little bit of taxation, right?
So would you say pre-heaven is more like a genetic?
Pre-heaven is a genetic. You could say constitution, which is interesting. You don't see the word constitution too much in the Huang DNA Jing. I don't think it's even in there. But you will see it in later texts, classic texts. You will see it in post-classics and in other areas. But constitutions, they refer to pre-heaven Qi. Okay. So the next thing we're going to look at is, I'm going to actually jump to the last page, and then we'll come back to this other stuff, because the last page is a little more important here. The last page has a box at the bottom that says factors that impact our health. Okay? So the factors that impact our health, and as you look at it, you see on the left-hand column, the 5 things, plus I put in there body fluids as well, which body fluids actually reside within yin. They're just another expression of yin that impact health. I'm going to do this particular exercise for probably the next 3 weeks that we're here together. So we have the vital substances over here. And over here, so these are the things we want more of. Okay? You know what they are. Yin, yang, qi, blood, essence. Throw body fluids in there as well. I'm getting tangled up. There you go. Okay. So let's look at the second column, and it says pathogenic factors. Pathogenic factors. These are the things we don't want. Chinese medicine is very binary this way. Good guys, bad guys, like a Disney movie, or the Bible, or something that has the righteous way and the wrong way, right? So we have this vital substances here. We want them. Pathogenic factors, well, that just sounds bad, right? And this group here describes everything from the common cold or allergies, or stubbing your toe, to end-stage cancer, to diabetes, heart disease, strokes, hemorrhages, fibroid tissues, low back pain, eczema, all kind of fall into this area. So we have these pathogenic factors, and you look, you see heat and fire, and cold and wind, dampness, phlegm, and dryness. Chinese medicine, before they had these pathogenic factors, thought that all diseases were basically put onto humans from spirits, in the spirit world, and then the animalistic world. And then eventually they arrived at these pathogenic factors, saying, no, wait a minute. Pathologies came from nature, from natural forces. Was there too much wind because one of these things was blowing on somebody all along, and now they've got a cold, or they've got neck pain from these fans? Were they exposed to too much heat? Were they exposed to too much cold? Some kind of exposure that has moved into the onto the body, hit the surface of the body, and then started penetrating more deeply into the body. Is it just on the skin? Is it in the meridians? Or has it actually gotten into the viscera? From outer to inner, from yang into the yin. And these pathogenic factors, where's my other pen? We got heat, we got cold, we got wind, dryness, we got dampness, and we're going to put phlegm in there as well. We'll talk about those later on, the differences. Which one am I forgetting here?
Fire.
Fire, thank you. Fire. Is that it? Did I get them all? Good. So these pathogens can be by themselves, or they can combine with different, with other ones. So you can have a condition of hot wind or wind heat. You can have wind cold. You can have heat dryness. Okay, they can combine. We'll show those later on. But what we're trying to constantly do with our medicine is reduce these pathogens, get them out of the body. Okay? If these vital substances are ample, these have very little space to occupy. Just like as if Shattuck Avenue out there is paved real nicely, no room for things to accumulate into the road. But if I go out there with my backhoe and I dig a big hole in there, you get garbage collecting in there, sticks collecting in there, cars, small children, things like that. Those aren't supposed to be stuck in the middle of the road. Okay? It's disruptive. It creates problems. There's a third kind of classification. We can have too little vital substances, of any number of those. We can have a presence of one or more of these, and that would be imbalance. Sometimes they're just one or the other, sometimes both of them. Or we can have a third one, which is called Chi stagnation, or blood stasis. And what this means is that in its purest sense, the vital substances are ample amounts. There is no pathogenic factor, but the chi in the blood just simply are not flowing well. So these are sort of the three areas we look at the relationship of vital substances and pathogenic factors. The third column speaks to our emotions, and this relates to the spirit, mind, body relationship of all these are human experiences. The moment we signed up to live, we also signed up to experience these emotional states. And it's important to have them. And at the same time, it's important to let them move through you. Okay? Every one of them. Joy, anger, worry, pensiveness, sadness, fear, shock. These are all emotions that if we don't resolve them, they start to consume vital substances. So some of these we have a positive, some of them we have a negative idea about them. Certainly nobody wants to sit with grief and fear and anger. But somebody who's never angry, life is not perfect for anybody. So you have to sort of resolve through that anger, move through, and even joy. One example that would be mania. Right? So these are things that impact our health, and we'll be talking a lot about this as we go along. We'll be looking at these in the pulse. We'll be looking at them in the tongue. We'll learn how to treat them with herbs, with needles, moxibustion, etc. Okay. Any questions on that? Good. Okay. Think I could do 5 elements in 15 minutes?
Yes.
Yes. All right. There's a vote of confidence. All right. How many of you are aware of vital substances? Or I mean of 5 elements? Yeah. The Chinese love numbers, right? They have yin and yang, 3 treasures, 4 levels, 5 elements, 6 stages, 7 emotions, the 8 principles. 9, what's 9? Something else, there's 9, I can't remember what it is. But they love these number systems, right? So we have the 5 elements. And the 5 elements came after the theories of yin-yang. There are practitioners out there that strictly treat on the 5 element theory. And it's, the Chinese have their elements, Egyptians have their elements. The Chinese elements are given, oftentimes represented by these 5 circles. Element is kind of a poor translation for the word xing, X-I-N-G. So, U is 5, xing is elements. But what it really means is the 5 stages or processes is a better word. You don't hear anybody talk about 5 processes, you will hear elements. But it's really processes because this is a very dynamic. Again, it's not static. Things are moving. And so what are these? We have fire, and we have earth, and we have metal, and water, and wood. And each one of these elements is transitioning into the other one in a clockwise manner. Some of these are easy to imagine, others are not. So for example, wood is easy to imagine it transforming into fire. We call this generating, or generation cycle. Wood generates fire. Fire generates earth. Earth generates metal, and that's everything, the earth, the core within these mountains filled with precious metals. From these mountains, water flows down. Okay? And of course, water, again, feeds the wood. Dynamic. We also have within this 5-element structure, we have a star. Well, I was making Star David, that's not right. I'm not even Jewish here. All right, so we have these areas of where there's a controlling aspect. That Earth will, where metal is going to generate water, well, Earth is going to come across and make sure the metal doesn't get too strong. Metal is going to contain or make sure that wood doesn't get too strong. Wood's going to come across and make sure that Earth doesn't get too strong, and so on. So you have this interior controlling cycle, they call it, to temper the other element. One way that's interesting to look at it is they say that on the generation cycle, let's look at fire for a second, that fire is the mother to Earth. That makes sense, right? Well, if wood is the mother to fire, that makes wood the grandmother to Earth. Follow me so far? Mm-hmm. So you have this dynamic, which actually, when I was studying in China, it didn't really manifest this way, because the grandmothers oftentimes are raising the children there. But the idea was that the mother is going to spoil her child consistently, and the grandmother says, whoa, 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 whoa. You need to raise your child, not spoil your child, right? It's this kind of controlling factor. So it keeps the interior balance in place. Right. Now, the neat thing about this is, there are other dynamics here, but we'll stay with this for right now, is that, if you're going back to your last page, I'm giving you some associations based on 5-element theory. Okay. And these are important. Most practitioners integrate a significant degree of this. And like I said, some of them really work strong within this. You see the wood, fire, earth, metal, water on the top there for each column, and then on each row, we start off with its association. And the first 2 rows are probably the most important ones, because what they do is they give you the organs associated with each element. So that wood contains within it the yin organ of the liver and the yang organ of the gallbladder. Fire has the heart and the pericardium for the yin organs, and the yang, small intestine, and the sanjiao. Sanjiao, another word for that is the triple burner. It is an organ system that is not recognized by Western medicine or anatomy. And it is an area of the upper burner, meaning above the diaphragm, the middle burner, which is pretty much the digestive system, and the lower burner, everything below that, which is reproductive organs, etc., and urinary system, and the bowels. So that these 3 areas, sometimes pathologies, will fit very clearly into the idea of Sanjiao pathology. And it oftentimes relates to the water systems of the body, or the lymphatic system of the body, the draining of toxins, for example. Okay. The way water is transformed and transported throughout the body. We'll get more into that later on as well. Under the earth element, we see the 2 digestive organs, the spleen and the stomach, for the yin and yang respectively. The stomach, we all think of clearly as a digestive organ. It receives the food and holds the food as it starts to pump it into the small intestine. But the stomach gets its energy, gets its qi from somewhere. And it is believed in the Chinese model that it gets it from the spleen. That the spleen is fueling the energy for the stomach. If we damage our stomach, we damage our spleen. If our spleen is damaged, it will be reflected in poor digestion. It's also thought that, that our thinking, our intellectual thinking, is controlled within that idea. That's why it's not a good idea to eat your food and do studying at the same time. When I was in school, my professors would walk through the area where students would eat and give us a little smack on the shoulder or something and tell us, stop studying. Don't study while you eat. It's a conflict. Okay? Eating is free. You know, if you're going to read something, you can read I don't know, your favorite romance model or novel. The metal element contains the lung and the large intestine. This one's a little bit, seems a little off for Western thinking, but what you can see this a lot of times with people who are asthmatic, who also experience bowel disturbances. It's a pretty common area. Water, we have kidney and urinary bladder. That's pretty clear. But if you look down on the far left column, let's just simply take a look at some of these different areas. And this is a very short list. This list is really expanded. We have different emotions that are associated with a particular element, different sounds, different tissues even. All this stuff is clinically relevant. Our sense organs, what sense organ identifies with which element? For example, the eyes are wood. Wood is the liver. A lot of eye pathologies are connected towards the liver. Let's see. And under the metal column, in terms of the sensory system, we have metal, which is lung, and sensory organ is the nose. That kind of makes sense, right? The kidneys are identified with the ears. A little harder to understand, but you'll pick up on this as we move along through the course. I'm going to drop down to the climate, or the seasons, because this is always applicable, in that every season it has in it a strength of a particular organ system. And in the case of the springtime, which is now, we have liver time. So a lot of times in liver energy is about emotions. A lot of times people tend to be a little more emotional in springtime. That can be a really strong emotion that's fun and easy, or it can be a challenging one. In the summertime, we have fire as the primary element. Earth actually comes in the latter part of the summer, the final 18 days of the summer. And then metal goes to autumn. It's a time of the lung. And you think about a lot of pathologies of the lung happen in the autumn time. And then the season of winter associates with the kidneys. And that's when our chi moves deeply into our body. The kidneys are considered to be the deepest part of the body, where a lot of the reparation and restoration takes place. Okay. I just gave you guys a whole lot of information. Felt like a windstorm in here. Oh, that's right, that's the fan over there. But to just get to gather that as much as you can. We will touch on this a lot as we go along. If you've got a question that's totally stirring and causing you tremendous difficult nights of sleep, feel free to email me. My email is on that first page. I'm happy to provide you with a little peace of mind if something's really getting in, or we'll talk about it next week.